The following review may contain spoilers. For the most part, the story is engaging. It's a mostly fine script. We have a character, Douglas, the main character, who's the muscle for a local crime family, and he's got a lot at stake. He has a special needs son that needs to be taken care of financially, and he has a huge complex decision to make whether to murder one of the crime family's associates because that guy molested a teenage girl. When it comes down to the moment, he decides to let the guy go, which causes Douglas's downfall. These elements of the script were well written and created a lot of tension and suspense. We also cared about this character Douglas a lot, even though, like I mentioned, he's the muscle for a local crime family. We're genuinely rooting for him because we know he's a good guy deep down inside. True character comes from decisions under pressure, and he decides to let this old man go, the crime associate go after some pleading. He's a child molester, but he doesn't deserve a death sentence for it. Douglas was aware of this, and we know that there's a good guy underneath the rough exterior, so we root for him. The film has a handful of weird directing choices, like there are some odd uses of jump cuts in the film, like in the opening scene where Douglas has to beat up someone, the guy that I mentioned, the crime associate. The camera sits there and shows the violence from like an invisible third-party perspective, and it's very dark and violent, but then the jump cuts come in and it just reminds the audience that we're watching a movie, and then the impact of the violence fizzles. So there were some odd directing choices here and there. Second problem, I'm not sure if I enjoy the acting of the two leads. Douglas is played by an actor named Cosmo Jarvis, who I googled to find out is also a musician. I'm not sure if he totally fits the character here. His voice is a little bit too high for this type of gang enforcer, and he also has this weird habit of holding his mouth to the side. I thought this was an odd choice for the character. I'm guessing the director and writer wanted to make the character like a little bit less than your average intelligence since he's a boxer and a criminal, but the way he holds his mouth just makes him seem like a total doofus. Jarvis's acting isn't bad at all. There's just a couple of weird decisions that I don't think fit the character. I don't know if the director encouraged this or Jarvis came up with it on his own and the director okayed it. Either way, the way he holds his mouth is kind of strange and distracting. The other lead is Barry Keoghan, who was fantastic as a disturbed teenager in Yorgos Lanthimos' The Killing of a Sacred Deer. But I was wondering as I was watching the film, since it was the first time I was watching this actor Keoghan, I was wondering if some of the strange mannerisms and facial expressions that the character had were his actual mannerisms. And I sort of get the answer here. He does have a lot of strange mannerisms and facial expressions, and they're bordering on overacting. Here, these mannerisms and facial expressions, they just don't fit with this character. This character is supposed to be like this low-level thug in this small crime family, but not only do the tics not fit, the mannerisms and facial expressions not fit, but he's also too young looking. He looks like a teenager, and he's very thin. An example of how he doesn't physically fit this character, there's a scene in a bar where he randomly picks a fight with a guy there and smashes a beer bottle on his face. The guy he picks a fight with is much taller and stronger looking than him, so it makes the scene feel a bit unrealistic. Anyway, I'm wondering if they had cast these two leads with actors that I think fit the character better on paper as the characters were written. I'm wondering if this would have improved the film a bit, but who knows. Another bad point about this film is the score. It's this synthesizer that borders on droning, and there's a lot of it throughout the film. It seems a little bit loud and slightly distracting. I think the movie's realism would have came through a little bit better if the score wasn't there. And the rest of the issues here have to deal with the writing. Although the script was good for the most part, there were some issues, there were some problems with the script. First off, the lead character, we're not really sure how tough he is. He's clearly tough physically, but he seems to be like a beta male in the scenes where he's not actually beating someone up. In the first scene, he's beating up a guy, and we think he's like a tough guy. But later, just basically right after that, his relationship with Keown's character is established, and he's clearly a beta male to Keown, who's, again, very thin and young looking. I know these gangsters are sociopaths and killers, and he would probably follow their orders, but I don't see him like kowtowing to them like he does, especially to the Keown character. There's an example of this in one scene in particular where Keown is just forcing him to have one hit of cocaine after another, and the guy just sheepishly takes them all. And it's just the way he does it. I just don't feel like a guy who's supposed to be this tough would do that. Another negative point about the script, it's totally unbelievable that Douglas's ex-girlfriend, the mother of his son, would let him babysit the boy for a whole day while she goes on a job interview. A couple of scenes prior to this, she is literally crying and worried sick about where her son is because Douglas returns him late. And the reason he does is because he's doing some gangster stuff with his friend, and the guy's in the car and the mom can see him. So why on earth, after crying and worrying about where her son is, would she let the father babysit the son for a whole day? And of course, things go wrong and the boy starts crying and screaming, and he has to bring the boy to his ex-girlfriend's mother. So that was a little bit unbelievable. But the worst part about the screenplay is the ending, and the ending really drags, and I literally fell asleep. There is this endless scene where Douglas is talking to an old lady. She has some affiliation with the crime family, and they're arguing about whether he should take this stash of money from her. And the scene is just endless, and it drags and drags and drags, and then I just paused the film and took a 10-minute nap. I couldn't keep my eyes open. After that endless scene, the last scene in the movie, Douglas is slowly dying from a gunshot wound, and he has another endless phone call with his ex-girlfriend, apologizing, I guess, for being a bad boyfriend and a bad father to his son, and he's crying, and then he dies. And this is not a satisfying ending. You wanted him to have some kind of resolution with the crime family, some kind of fight or battle or something. I know this is the obvious choice, but what did they have in place of that? They had two endlessly long conversations, and they were really boring. So why not just go with the obvious and have a big fight scene with the gang? So I don't understand why they chose this strange ending. And talking about the script, I'm wondering even why I mentioned it in the good section to begin with. There's a lot of problems here. They started out with some good ideas, but there are a lot of problems throughout the film. My final rating for The Shadow of Violence is 2 stars. As of the making of this video, the Rotten Tomatoes percentage for The Shadow of Violence is 94%, which is just way too high. Some good ideas in the story and overall competent direction cannot make up for some major story problems, and I think some miscasting on the part of the two leads. A decent effort, but not enough to recommend.